Hey kids! Your old friend Mr. Gray and Roswell Underground are back. This time with some fancy new Ray-Ban shades, just in case the men in black want to play their little flash game again. I don't know about you, but I really hate people that can't mind their own business. You know the type. They just sit around looking for something to make them mad so they can barge in and ruin things for everyone else. This week's contributor understands. Army Jaden A sent in a story about how a perfectly simple night out with friends turned into something much more complicated. Thanks to those jumpy men in black and friends, it sounds like she had one strange awakening. I'm not the type of person that gets drunk on a Friday evening with friends, laughing the night away and staggering over to a payphone to call a taxi home. But I guess that night I was that type of person. At least, that was my first assumption when I woke to find myself sprawled out on the Muir Redwoods forest floor in San Francisco, still in my casual party attire, doused in thick mud, my brown locks astray on top of my scalp, wildly sticking out like I was a crazed scientist. No cuts or purple and blue bruises marked my annually summer tan skin, so I thought I must have gotten myself out there without anyone struggling to kidnap me or murder me just for an adrenaline rush. God, just writing that gives me the shivers down my spine. I remember stretching my achy legs into a standing position and rolling my sore shoulders, grunting in irritation with each movement I took. The lush forest was pitch black with lumbering trees towering over me like those horror movie monsters we all detested our youth. An eerie cloud of fog hovered at the sidelines of where I was planted, completely paralyzed with fright. The dark is my worst enemy. It's the one thing in the entire universe that makes me forget how to breathe and blink. My first instinct was to pull out my iPhone and call my friends who must have thought I went home, even though really I would have much rather have had a handy-dandy flashlight instead. Only problem was, there was no cell signal or Wi-Fi source, nor did the data on my phone want to work either. That, of course, weirded me out more, right down to the bone. That was when a second assumption crossed my mind. Maybe, just maybe, I was dead. That was what I thought at first. Then I questioned my space cadet self. If I was dead, how could I feel anything? So I dismissed the idea straight away, never wanting to look back on it once I decided it was best not to assume such a theory. I recall snippets every now and again of what really happened to me that night, but it's merely only glaring white lights burning into my retinas. Each time I want to wrap my mind around my memory, it slips away like ice cubes within my palm. I try hard to remember. I really do. But I guess some things aren't meant to be remembered. I'm grateful in a way that I can't grasp it, for I'm way too terrified to find out what nasty thing I had done to get myself in the middle of a thick forest that night. When I gave up on trying to contact my friends, I wondered if my white Honda was parked over in the parking lot at the opening of the park. If I was really drunk at the time, I'm actually surprised I made it all the way to the forest without driving right off the San Francisco Bridge and plunging into the cold black peninsula. Or at the very least, I hadn't been pulled over to the side of the road by the police. I look back on that night, and I remember finding no white car that stuck out against the dark shadow of the night. The only light that illuminated the empty parking lot was the orange street lamp standing at the edge of the driveway that leads up to the lot, with moths and mosquitoes zapping off the light's reflection. With the sight of no vehicle, I had figured my best option was to begin my long and dreaded trek back to the city, and then to hail a taxi the rest of the way to my house. As my bare, filthy feet had slapped the sidewalk that ran along the Golden Gate Bridge, speeding cars would zoom right past me, nearly knocking me on my butt. I would silently curse at them while I would wrap my arms around my quivering body, the tiny hairs standing on edge from the cold. Why was it so cold? I had asked myself over and over again, truly curious. My last concise memory I had of that night was sitting at a quaint bar that my friends and I only went to have a group conversation about our week each Friday. I never drank, usually. And if I did, I'm sure my friends would have safely made sure I arrived alive at home. That last memory was on June 5th, 2016. When I completely crossed the bridge, I followed the sidewalk to an abandoned gas station with only the cashier inside watching the 12 o'clock news. The man was scraggly, middle-aged, and plastered in silver hair that covered the entire surface area of his body. When he spotted me looking at him through the glass door, he walked around the counter and slid the open sign to the closed side, all the while giving me a disapproving shake of his head. "Wait!" I called out after him when he turned around back behind the counter. He walked back over to the door, clearly annoyed by me. "What?" he snapped, annoyance ringing in his deep, scruffy voice. I paused slightly, then asked, "What's the date today?" "The date? On. You have had too much to drink. Do you want me to call you a cab or someone?" "All I want to know is the date. That's all, and then I'll be out of your hair," I replied. He sighed, his head hanging low with his arms stretched out holding open the door. The cashier looked up at me and then said, "Today is August 12th. Now scram." I can play back that moment the most. My heart had stopped for a split second, and the feeling in my limbs evaporated almost instantaneously. My hand rushed to my neck as my windpipe swelled with anxiety. Where had I been all this time? I still don't even know to this day. The man quickly noticed my extreme reaction and scrambled to my side. "My God," he said. "Your face is pale, almost like you've seen a ghost. Hold on, let me call 911. I didn't hold on, though. I tore off towards the inky main road. The man screamed out to me, threats and yells with real concern, all in one sentence. Of course I didn't listen, but that was no real priority in my book at the time. So here's the third assumption I've come up with. I was abducted. Maybe by aliens or crazed men in the mob, or even AIs created by the government. Who'll ever know, right? If I dare tell anyone about this insane theory of mine, I'm sure I'll be locked up in the nut house or lose everything I've worked for and worked hard to keep. I want my story to be told and to be believed, and not set aside by those who don't believe just because it could be a hoax for getting attention. I continued running down the sidewalk, heaving and whimpering in tears. Cars weren't stopping, nor did anyone seem to care about the drunk lady on the pavement beside them as they drove by. I wasn't even drunk. Behind me, I could hear a car slow and then come to a stop at the curb. Cautiously, I turned around, wiping away the river of salty tears that flowed down my rosy cheeks from the bitter air. In front of me was a jet black sedan with two men in fine tailored black tie suits. Their eyes were shadowed by black shades, and their faces were rock-hard scowls with no trace of emotion. I stood maybe 5 steps away from touching the pristine hood of the vehicle when they opened the doors in a synchronized motion. They were about to step out, but another vehicle pulled up beside me. This one I recognized instantly. It was my best friend's truck. "Get in! Now!" she shouted with such power and swiftness I automatically accepted her order. I climbed in, and as soon as I did, she fell back into the flow of late-night traffic with such speed I barely even noticed the men in black leap at my open window. They backed off when she rolled it up, standing at the side of the road in frustration. "Who are those guys?" I questioned her. "Your worst nightmare," she replied with such hatred. "They are the men in black, the guys that deal with the civilians that know about ETs." Men in black? ET? What have I missed? How do you know so much? "Yes, the men in black are real, and same for aliens," she said, keeping her eyes on the road. "It's a long story of how I know all of this, and I don't feel like sharing." I still had one last question that was etched into my brain, and it was driving me mad. How am I involved in all of this? I already had a hunch of what the answer could be, but I needed to hear it from someone else, so I didn't think I was going crazy. Her eyes wavered on me before she answered with this. Carla, you were abducted by aliens, and we are being chased by those men that want to take away your memory of the event. But we can't let that happen. But I don't even remember. You will eventually, she said. Her face softened when she noticed my perplexed expression and whispered, You have to share your story. People need to know. So this is my story, and I want the world to know that we are not alone. I sure do love a happy ending. That was happy, right? I mean, no one died or anything, so that's gotta count. And, more importantly, no one barged in to shut me down again. Looks like the shades are working. So on that note, I bid you all a fond farewell until next time. Stay alert, stay safe. I'm Mr. Gray, signing off.